Hey guys, welcome back to Libby's Lounge, a Patreon edition where we are doing chapter 22 of the Unofficial audiobook. So here we go. 22. Maureen. The dim light of the bar danced off the masks in Maureen's hand as she turned the necklace over in her fingers. What would have become of her if she hadn't seen the man slip it into his pocket? If she believed Mike when he told her she was imagining things? Would she be blissfully living with Oliver and Mike? Her mother still among the breathing? Would Francis have deemed her an enemy for knowing their location and identities, and have Eileen take her out? She spent 5 hours with her father, cramming her brain full of every bit of information about the graveyard contracts. Time, dates, names, all sat nestled in her head. She didn't need it all. The true goal was to get the information on the upcoming missions, but whatever they could milk out of her father was worth it. A hand brushed her shoulder, and she jerked away, turning to find Mike and Oliver. She let out a long sigh. Sorry, I'm a bit jumpy. Understandable, Oliver said, taking the seat beside her, Mike sitting on his other side. You don't have to do this. We'll find an alternative. But I want to, she countered, thumb brushing against the charm in her hand. I've never been much use to the family. Even Delta was a long shot, but this? This is blending in, being forgettable, remembering the details and analyzing everything to stay safe. I've been doing that since I was 10, Ollie. This is safe as long as Dad's giving me the right information. There's nothing safe about spying on the legacy, Mike whispered, leaning across Oliver. Only if you're bad at it, Oliver said, and smiled at her. I have yet to find something Liv is bad at. The confidence in his words filled her with an unexpected warmth. Maureen was sure he was going to fight the hardest against this, but having his blessing? Her heart sank, the guilt of deceiving him threatening to sneak in. Thanks. She glanced at the clock above the bar. My ride will be here in a few minutes. Can I have a moment with Mike? Her stomach flipped as the request left her mouth. They hadn't spoken about Oliver coming home to find her and Mike in bed, and there was no way to know where he stood now. But it wouldn't matter, since there was one more thing she needed to do before she could leave. To her surprise, he laughed and shook his head. Yeah. The bar stool scraped against the floor as he stood and wrapped her in a hug. There was no point fighting the tears that sprang to her eyes. This felt like goodbye because it was. Once she left this bar, there was no turning back, and she would do what she could to shield Oliver from the fallout, but her father was going to burn. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. Be safe, Liv. Always, she said, taking a deep breath as he walked away. Mike scooted into Oliver's seat and leaned in, lips brushing against hers, and she stilled. He raised his eyebrows, but said nothing about it. You want to talk about what happened? I told you what happened, she said. Mike shook his head and reached for her broken fingers, and she pulled them back. No, you said what happened. I asked if you wanted to talk about it. Maureen looked away, the sound of snapping fingers and Seamus's screams echoing through her mind. I'm fine. That's the biggest load of bullshit I've ever heard. He scoffed and sat back on the stool. You can't do this, Liv, and not because you can't, he said before she could cut him off, but because you don't know what these people have done or are willing to do. For fuck's sake, they tortured you. Anger sparked in her chest and she tightened her fist around the necklace, shooting a glare back at him. At least they're willing to keep me alive. That's more than I can say for my own parents. Mike's eyes widened. Liv, you and I both know my father would have signed off on my death if Oliver wasn't in that room. His mouth opened and closed a few times, but he knew she was right. I can't do this anymore, she said, cutting straight to the point. She didn't want to drag this out any longer than needed. Carrying the secret she had was exhausting, and she worried if she didn't rip the Band-Aid off, he would be able to convince her to do something that would get them both killed. Mike's shocked expression betrayed the calm in his voice. What? This was never supposed to work. You said so yourself. But what about Ollie? What about the funeral? Annoyance shot through her. In one moment, he seemed to care for her in a way no one else could, and then in the next breath, his concern for Ollie trumped everything. It always would. It's not like you guys came to June's memorial, Maureen said, unable to keep the anger from her voice. She scoffed and looked away to hide the sudden moisture in her eyes. That had been the hardest day of her life, and strangers stood by her side. So you're just going to abandon him? Abandon me? His voice rose, and Maureen rubbed the thumb over the mask, fighting the guilt wanting to burrow into her chest. Like they hadn't abandoned her first. Like he didn't betray her first. I can't, Mike. If I'm going to pull this off, I need a clear head. And I don't have that around you. Love, don't call me that, she said, knots forming in her stomach. God, this shouldn't be so hard. But she trusted him, fallen in love with him. I can't. I thought we were good. I thought... Liv, I love you. But not as much as you love Ollie, Maureen countered, and it brought pleasure to see him flinch in response. You know, I made 2 critical mistakes when I came home. She slid her hand to rest in front of him on the bar, and Mike looked down at it. I thought you can love me more than him, she said, her voice cracking, and I thought I could forgive you for knowing what my father had planned. She picked up her hand, revealing the masks he retrieved for her. I know what I saw that night. The only way you got this back was from the man who stole it. What do you think Oliver would do if he found out? Mike's wide eyes looked over at her, and then glanced to where Oliver waited, his mouth trying to form words, but Maureen saved him the trouble. There was no way for you to make it from the apartment in Philly to the city in that short of time. You were already there. He shook his head. It's not what you think. It doesn't matter what I think. My mother told me he sent them, she lied. June died that night. I killed someone, Mike. Maureen said, dropping her voice, the pain of her sins resurfacing. I know that doesn't seem like a big deal to you, but I murdered someone. I left this place to get away from that. Then why did you come back? Because I didn't want to be alone, she admitted, letting the pain pulse through her. Because even though I realized what you'd done, you made me feel safe. I didn't know he'd sent mercenaries. His confession was soft, and a shot of vindication raced through her. I swear, Liv, you made me believe I was crazy. He reached for her hand and she let him have it, running his thumbs across her knuckles, eyes dropping. I'm sorry. The sincerity rang in his words, but it would never be enough. Please, don't go. Her pulse fluttered at his request, her body telling her to lean in and comfort him, to pull him close, but her mind knew what needed to be done. As long as he chased her, her secret life at the Legacy would be in danger. She reached out, lifting his chin. Are you asking for you or Oliver? Can't it be both? She swallowed around the emotion that found its way to her throat. No, Mike. I won't be second to my brother anymore. She pulled her hand away and slid off the stool, grabbing the necklace from the counter. She held it out and dropped it into his hand. Looks like I do have a secret to keep from Ollie after all. He closed his finger around the gift, a half laugh leaving him. Why would you agree to do this? Spy on the Legacy knowing your father tried to kill you? This isn't a game, Liv. They will dismember you if they find out. Because I meant what I said in the office. I need to stay useful. And I don't want my life to be tied to Oliver being in the room. If I can prove to my father I have value, then maybe he'll decide I'm worth keeping around on my own merit. Tears glistened in his eyes, and she buried the empathy that wanted to reach for him. He had known they were in trouble and did nothing to stop it. He could have. He should have. He was just as guilty as her father. No, more so. Her father outright hated her, but Mike? How could he do that? Lie to her even when he claimed to love her? Make her fall in love with him? A sour taste filled her mouth and she scowled. After her father, she would come for him. Liv, wait. No. She stepped away from his outstretched hand. I love you. I never said you didn't, she countered, and forced back the words he wanted to hear. She did love him, more than she ever could admit, because the truth was, as much as she loved him, she wanted justice for her Aunt Moore. If you follow me, I'll tell Oliver everything. We'll see how much he loves you after he finds out you used me and June as chess pieces to win favor with our father. She turned away before he could say anything else. Oliver caught her eye and she forced a small smile on her face and nodded to him. With a slight adjustment, his gaze followed her to the exit outside. Her pulse pounded in her ears as one of the black Legacy SUVs pulled up. Had she just done that? Cut her lifeline to her family? She reached up for the necklace to ground her, and her trembling fingers met skin, panic begging to be released. Andrew stepped out on the curb, his hard features softening the moment their eyes met, and a frown filled his face as he opened the rear door and escorted her in. You good? He asked. Maureen looked up, his pure sincerity undoing her, and she let out a sob. No, I'm not. He nodded. Let's get you home. Home. A place that had been stolen from her 3 times now. I don't have a home, she said, the words a fumbled mess between the sobs. Andrew glanced over his shoulder and she looked too, spying Mike in the doorway, looking up and down the street for her. Andrew blocked her from view, giving a small smile. Well, I do, and I'd love to bring you there. And that is the end of chapter 22. This one actually took a couple of rewrites to get right because I had to bring Oliver into the mix. Originally, the chapter 2 chapters ago, that was a full rewrite when we brought Jeffrey in to the office and put it in Mike's perspective. And so this scene, which is so important to Maureen's, like, she needs to break away from Mike because Mike and Oliver are going to chase her. And so we needed a really good reason as to why they wouldn't chase her. And so this is like the pivotal moment where she's making the decision, like, I'm cutting ties with Oliver, I'm cutting ties with Mike, and I am fully dedicating myself to the legacy. And I think one of my favorite lines in here is when she says, or when Mike says, I love you. And she's like, I never said you didn't. Because I think a lot of the times it's like, I love you. Like, I know you, like, we feel like we have to reciprocate it. And she's at the point now where she's like, that's great that you love me. But you didn't love me enough. So anyways, that's a little behind the scenes of this chapter. I'm going to jump in right to chapter 23 and we'll see you next chapter.